I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with an acquaintance and soon to be friend. I am assuming Ashley. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
I appreciate it. We connected on LinkedIn probably a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I don't know how long it's been. It's been a while. But
But it
by the
feels
time
like
this,
forever.
right, it just feels like you're always been in my LinkedIn feed. But by the time this episode comes out, just so everyone knows, I'm really ahead of schedule now, which I guess is a good thing. But part of me feels really bad telling people that, hey, your episode will come out in a little bit. But by the time this episode has come out, we'll be longtime friends.
Yes. Yay.
So Ashley, I just want to say this. We're recording here, what is it, July now, and you just launched a skincare line, which we'll talk a little bit about, but congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited about it.
That's so exciting. So Ashley has a lot to talk about today, and she has two life shift moments in her life, or two moments that really changed the trajectory of where she was going. And as most of the guests have that are a little bit stronger of topics or harder topics to talk about, a lot of times it comes from really, really dark, tough moments. So I just want to put that out there that if you are someone listening right now that may get triggered by something a little bit or very dark, you may want to fast forward or maybe skip this episode for now until you're ready. So, what I love to do, Ashley, is I love for my guests to paint kind of the picture of who you were before things started changing. And that may involve giving us a little bit of a backstory of your childhood. So, just share a little bit about who you are, and we'll go from there.
I'd love to. In terms of my childhood and my upbringing, my story started out pretty rough in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had what I could only remember as a normal childhood up until I was 9 years old. And when I was nine, I started being abused sexually, physically, mentally. And that abuse went on until age 15. So for 6 years of my childhood, there was most of it, I don't even remember, if I'm being
Mm-hmm.
completely honest. Survival kicked in and I blacked out a lot of what should have been like very happy learning, growing moments as a
Yeah.
child where you're playing and you're discovering who you are and you're doing fun things, right? Like playing sports and
Mm-hmm.
sleeping over friends' houses. And I didn't really get any of that because of what was going on in my home. And
Right.
when I was 15, the abuse abruptly stopped because I started fighting back. And
Oh,
I started, physically fighting back to stop what was going on. And my
right.
life did change a lot. But I started
Mm-hmm.
pouring into music a lot in my
Mm-hmm.
childhood and leaning all of my emotions and what was going on into that. And I found this
Yeah.
love for um, inserting emotion externally without giving a direct message of what was going on, which interestingly enough,
Yeah.
by profession, I am a brand and marketing professional. And
Right.
that's my job, is to,
Emotion.
yeah, invoke emotion and, emotional based decision making and inspire others to make decisions through indirect messaging. So
Mm-hmm.
this experience from my childhood did lead into my career long term.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about too. I think there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that have faced maybe not quite as severe situations as a child, but have faced abuse, have faced sexual abuse, physical abuse,
Mhm.
neglect, all sorts of things. And I think it's common to have that child wound kind of block everything, like close it off
Yeah.
and not remember those memories, and to then mourn what should have been, right? And like, why me? And then did you internalize any of that at that age, as to like, why me, those moments?
No, I didn't. And
That's amazing.
yeah, it's really interesting. I have always had this just fighter protector mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really had that mentality of thinking, what if, what could be, why me,
Okay.
questioning my environment. And I thank God for that, because
Yeah.
I don't know if I could have survived the same to have a thriving story that I have now. And I know that I will continue to have. And working with, I've worked with organizations that help those recovering from child abuse, different child abuse situations, PTSD, trauma. And a lot of individuals can't say that. They're either not here to say that,
Mm-hmm.
or they're still recovering from the trauma. They're still in the trauma. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I never did that. And I, I'm thankful.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's like, I don't know if nobody can see my mouth drop, as to like, in such dire situations, there was like a light, a fortunate light, in which you were not internalizing that and you were trying to fight that. Because, like you said, a lot of people get stuck there,
Mhm.
and that that there's something wrong with me. There's, a lot of that, and that it prolongs the grief period, and it just leads to either really drastic things, or just dark, dark times. So I'm glad that you were able to fight back, one, to stop what was happening to you, and then you were able to take that moment and kind of continue elevating. Did you get out and start to thrive, or was that always something that was there for you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I never,
Mm-hmm.
I never internalized these thoughts, these
Mm-hmm.
self-limiting beliefs in terms of, I can't, or I'm not worthy,
Right.
or why me. But it did come out in other ways. I had very severe PTSD, and I didn't realize it because I had pushed this experience so far in the
Mm-hmm.
back of my mind that I didn't really I didn't realize the ways that I was interacting with people, the ways that I was reacting to certain
Mm-hmm.
situations that, to a normal human, they wouldn't understand why my reactions were so extreme, right? I might get angry very easily, or I would get
Mm-hmm.
offended very easily, or my fight would kick in immediately, or my protect mode would kick in so fast. And
Mm-hmm.
while I wasn't having these internal self-limiting beliefs externally, it was just coming out so aggressive and angry. And I did have issues with suicide attempts throughout my
Mm-hmm.
entire childhood. And it wasn't necessarily why me and I feel sorry for me. It was more, make it stop,
Mm-hmm.
and
Make it
let me
stop.
stop this situation from continuing on. I want to stop the cycle. Even though I never thought I would do those things, it was more, okay, if it stops with me, if it stops right now, it won't continue. And that was
Mm-hmm.
my mentality. And while I was able to thrive professionally, I started out a really great career in sales. And even before that, in the restaurant industry, I have always naturally moved into leadership roles, training others, helping them be better them, helping them find the things that will make them better in order to help them grow. And
Right.
I've done very well in terms of connecting my why, my passions, and helping
Mm-hmm.
others. But in my personal life, it's always been very held back until recent years. And even with throughout my 20s, right? I'm an
Mm-hmm.
adult now. I'm focused on my career. I'm no longer attempting suicide like I was when I was a child. I did start getting triggered again. And I did
Mm-hmm.
start having some internalization issues 7 years ago that led to my first just very, very intense pivotal moment. And, that's led to where I am today.
Yeah. It's I'm sitting here from the perspective of someone that lost a parent when I was younger and then pushed down those feelings and found a way to be successful because I thought like mine, I can't relate as much because mine felt very internal. Like I felt like I had to prove something that I was going to be successful. And the more energy that I put into being successful, promotions, new jobs, higher levels, next degree, next master's degree, I put all that energy there so that I didn't have to focus on
Mhm.
that personal thing. Is any of that similar? Do you think that some of that energy that you put towards your professional life was to minimize addressing the personal side, or am I way off base
No,
here?
I mean, I don't consciously think that I did that, but I did do
Yeah,
that. And I
right,
genuinely believe it comes back to that fight or flight, that nurture versus nature that we have in us, that my
right.
body, my mind pushed me towards compartmentalizing and focusing
Yeah,
on certain
protection.
areas. Yes, exactly. Protecting my emotions. And I was very unemotional, very, very just dead on the inside because I mean,
Right,
I could not give to happy emotions, to sad emotions, anything but anger, right? Anger would
right.
provoke inside of me so easily, but anything else, it was just go, 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 focus on the tangible, right? And I love
Mm-hmm.
strategy. I love process. I love, implementing procedures. And again, this goes back to things that I can control, which is a natural love
Right.
for me still even today. But compartmentalizing these things, it's not healthy, right? It only sustains
Right.
for so long, and that is exactly what happened to me. Was I did compartmentalize for so long in order to survive, to get through
Mm-hmm.
the day. That 7 years ago, we're in July right now talking about this,
Yeah.
but 7 years ago, as of last week, I had a very serious bout of a suicide attempt. And
Mm.
it was the only time in my adult life that I had these thoughts, that I had tried to go through with this physical thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot. It just, everything came to, and I was triggered all the time, and my trauma came back to me. And I was having these paralyzing dreams, and my PTSD was so awful. And it was because I was subconsciously trying to control every area of my life in order to
Right.
avoid feeling.
Was there anything that happened in your life that triggered that episode of like severe PTSD leading to the suicide attempt?
It was my environment. So I
Mm.
feel like a lot of us traditionally, subconsciously, continue to lean into environments that we're comfortable in, whether it's healthy or not. And
Yeah.
I have found myself yet again in an environment that I was comfortable in, right? It was not healthy, but it's all I
Mm-hmm.
knew.
It was familiar.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
my body and my mind were just so exhausted. And the way that it was triggered, it just doesn't even make sense to me today. Thinking
Mm-hmm.
about it and thinking about the situation that happened that day,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make sense to me. But
Yeah.
it's what happened. It's what my body did.
Right.
And I was put in a very serious, literal situation where it was either, okay, my options were the police are called and you are committed by force, or you call someone that you know will help you and you do whatever they tell you to do. I chose the
Mm-hmm.
second option. Thank God it
Good.
was 1 a.m.
Right.
Someone picked up the phone and they came and got me. And I started some very, very intense healing. And it was the
Yeah.
hardest thing I've done in my life, the absolute hardest. There's never been anything harder in my life. And it was very intense and it hurt a lot. And it was
Yep.
hard feeling for the first time in my life through this journey.
I bet. Because you had gone 20 plus years
Mhm.
of not feeling,
27.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a good point there too, and I it's hard to say because sometimes it's a breaking point, right? You have to be
Yeah.
ready to face that. You can't be forced into that, and probably making that second option of calling someone to get help showed that you were ready to go deep. And I'm assuming good things came from that really, really hard time. Like what did you learn most about yourself during the healing process?
Um,
Like what did you discover about yourself?
I think the greatest thing that I discovered is that I am worthy of
Mm,
everything good that is allowed to happen in my life. And I discovered what true love was. I discovered self
mm,
love, self care. And this is where a huge part of my journey to skincare, right? I just launched
mm-hmm.
this company that I'm so passionate about. This is where my love for skincare started, was through my mental health journey, discovering what true personal care was, caring about self, whether it's physically on the
Mm-hmm.
outside or mentally and emotionally on the inside. I learned that personal care above everything is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself, period.
And it makes you better at helping others when you care for it's kind of that whole analogy of the put your mask on first, right? And then you're better equipped to help others through whatever they're going through. I've talked to a couple other people about this probably overused word of
Mhm.
self-care, right? In today's environment, a lot of people are like, oh, I took a nap, but that's self-care. Well, yes, it is, but that's not, you know, we're talking about a little bit more than your spa day, but rather like really honoring your inside, like what's happening that will then manifest on the outside and help other people. I was thinking, and I wonder if you relate to this. So, and related to after that healing moment of, or moments probably of your PTSD, post PTSD, post PTSD moment, when I was going deep in therapy or counseling after 20 plus years of not mourning my mom dying, the thing that triggered for me that helped me understand my entire life from when she died to that moment was when my therapist said to me, everything that you've done since that moment, you've let the 8-year old version of you make the decision. Do you relate to the idea of that younger version of you making the decisions in order to protect you
I
throughout your
do.
life?
I get that statement completely, because when I think back to these emotional decisions that I was making when I was angry in the moment,
Yeah.
it was me as a child throwing a temper tantrum and not
Mm-hmm.
understanding how to deal with these emotions that I was having, because I missed out on that part of my childhood, learning emotion, learning what they are, learning how to
Right.
properly handle them and communicate. I was suppressed. My voice was
Mm-hmm.
suppressed for so many
Yeah.
years. And I went through my childhood and a lot of my adulthood up until 7 years ago without a soul ever knowing what happened to me, besides one person
Mm,
who did not do the right thing. But everyone
mm,
else in my
right.
life had no idea, no clue what was going on with
Mm-hmm.
me. And they would also not understand, like, how are you so passionate about helping others and you want to help other people be better, but you're so angry in your personal life. And it makes sense to me now, right? It makes sense
Now it does,
so
right?
much, and I relate to that statement and that sentiment so deeply, because when you don't learn how to properly communicate or handle certain things that
Mm-hmm.
you learn as a child, oh my gosh, as an adult, it is very hard to learn and cope with.
Right. And it was just so interesting to me because at that moment I was like, that just makes so much sense. And I never ever considered that any of my decisions were being made by
Mhm.
that version of me who had suppressed, the ability to be sad, or because I wasn't allowed. In my 8-year-old brain, I had to appear perfect, which seems to be how hid those things too. You had to subconsciously probably thought, I need to be fine. I need to look fine. Everyone needs to see what I can do
Yeah.
and do it well. And then nobody will question it, right? Like, I don't want to talk about it. But then when you do, which you do now, you want to talk about it all the time because you don't want other people to go through the same situation,
Mhm.
or, like if they're going through such a hard time, you want them to
Yeah.
end that quick enough, right? To get to the good
Yeah.
parts, right? And that seems to be where we're going. So, why don't we carry on to that pivotal? Do you look at the pivotal moment? I guess I should stop here. Do you look at that pivotal moment as the suicide attempt, the call, the decision to change? Which one do you think is really that, like, moment?
I wanted to help others
Mm,
to stay away from the thoughts that were in my head. And now I want to genuinely help others be their best version of their self so that they can have what I have. And that's self love. And
mm-hmm,
that is this beautiful life around me that I get to experience every day. And in that moment where that call was made and the healing started, it really did start me on this journey to have more of a proper servant mentality and to focus my day to day in what meant the most to me. So, for example,
mm-hmm,
I genuinely only want to work with organizations and individuals that have a purposeful mission in their brand and in their self. What is the true why behind what you're doing? Is it financially driven? Is it driven by being a celebrity or an influencer? Or is it to create a better life for the world around us? Is it something that's genuinely going to help improve the lives of those around us? And that's what I lead my life with now. And it's how
mm-hmm,
I raise my children, and it's how I interact with the friends and the circle that I have in my life now, and those that I interact with on LinkedIn and other
mm-hmm.
platforms. So it very greatly changed the trajectory of my life because I'm very, very intentional now of who I choose to interact with, how I choose to represent, and where I choose to go from this moment forward.
Yeah. Before, were you a people pleaser before? Like, did you want the most amount of people to like what you've done or approve what you've done? Or and now you're more intentional about like this is really the drive, or is it kind of been always more about accomplishing
Yeah,
things?
I've never been a people pleaser. That's not,
Okay.
it hasn't been in my personality necessarily to be a people pleaser. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
the way that I help others is different. Before, I was trying to force the
Yeah.
help on other people so that they could have a better
Okay.
life. And now I share my story, or I share my opinions, I share my thoughts, my experiences, my all the good, the bad, the wins, everything, so that others can make the
Mm-hmm.
decisions for themselves to want to gain my help, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And I think that's what hopefully society is also moving towards, a little bit more of people unapologetically sharing the real parts of them. I think for so long, growing up, we're often conditioned to be a certain way, say a certain thing, say it a certain way, and now I feel like there are more people that are like you're describing, intentionally sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, the real. And I think we're on a good
I
path.
do too. And something that I've heard from some individuals in terms of this, which it doesn't sit right with me at all, is I've heard questions about certain individuals thinking that us sharing our experiences and thinking differently about how we interact and the world that we want to create going forward in the future, that those of us who are different are now soft, and we're not as like hard or brave as those that came before us because we choose to talk. And it's a really
Mm-hmm.
interesting mentality that I hear in terms of this, because mine hearing this is no, the ones who choose to speak out and help others, those are the brave ones. They're not the soft ones, because they are being
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, sharing their stories, their experiences, their thoughts in order to create a better world, instead of keeping it the same status quo that it's been, where we're silent. And the generations are changing, the
Yeah.
world around us is
Mm-hmm.
changing.
Thankfully.
I'm grateful for it.
I am very grateful for it. And I think a lot of those people, the naysayers, are projecting their fear of something that possibly they're
Mhm.
not ready to share, or they've pushed down. Because I've faced the same thing, for years I've just shared parts of my story, and the gross, terrible parts that nobody
Yeah.
traditionally would share, right? And people, I get the messages behind the scenes like, thank you, that's the moment I needed to hear today.
Mhm.
Something resonated. And in me, it's like, thank God that person doesn't
Yeah.
feel alone, right? And so to me, that's when it's worth it. It's like, sure, it helps me to share because, probably going through that healing moment, getting stuff out is
It
so
is.
healing in itself, right? And not bottling it up and pushing it down and
Mhm.
compartmentalizing. So selfishly, I do it for me, protecting or
Yeah.
leaning into the self, but I'm also happy when it does other things. So I'm glad that you are the way you are, and it's probably why we
Yeah.
gravitated towards each other. I mean, I think there's a natural attraction of people that have similar
Mhm.
vibes going on. So I applaud what you're doing and what you share, which kind of leads into a second bigger, or not bigger, a second big pivotal
Yeah,
moment in
and
your
it
life.
does. And the person that I have become, just like you say, now I share because my focus is that one person, right? That one person that might feel
Mm-hmm.
alone or ashamed of whatever the reason is, right? Regardless of, my case, I share my experience with abuse and trauma and PTSD. And regardless of
Mm-hmm.
what kind of trauma or what self limiting beliefs that you have, I share and I share my journey and my mission to focus on that one person. If I can help one person today get
Mm-hmm.
into my inbox or get on a call with me and share their story for the first time in their life, that to me is so much more than the hundreds of thousands of impressions that I'll have on some of my posts on LinkedIn. I don't care about that. I care about the person that gets into the
Right.
inbox. And sharing this story,
Right.
sharing my mission, which I've done it every year for 6 years now, since a year after my healing journey began. It started with me getting baptized a year later. And the way that I chose to become baptized was to give a video testimony of my experience and share that live in front of thousands of people and also have it posted online. And that moment changed my life for every single year in the month of April, which is Child Abuse Awareness Month. I share my story. And normally around
Mm-hmm.
this time of year, I share it again because this is my anniversary of becoming a new me, of becoming the best
Right.
me that I have been ever in my life. I share my story and I've shared it on different platforms. It's been on YouTube, on Vimeo, on Twitter, it's been in blogs, on Instagram. And this year I chose to challenge myself through a conversation I had with my husband and share on LinkedIn. And it was so scary because I've never shared on a professional platform. But in
Mm-hmm.
seeing in, the last couple years with COVID, the mental health awareness coming out because of the experience we've had with being isolated and how that has impacted
Right.
us internally as individuals. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to, keep inside of us. We're not meant to compartmentalize. We're meant to share our
Right.
lives with other people. And in seeing that, I was very much so determined to share my message this April on LinkedIn. And in doing that and having so much acceptance in the community and having so many Zoom calls and conversations in my DMs and text messages and regular phone calls, it really drove me to look at this skincare line passion that I've had for years
Mm-hmm.
and implement it with a real mission to serve mental health. And earlier this year, I started working on my skincare line seriously. But then in April, when I had this experience of reaching so many people in helping with mental health awareness and PTSD awareness, trauma awareness, I decided that, okay, when I launch this skincare line, like I'm going to do it seriously. I'm going to take my passion for clean
Mm-hmm.
ingredients, for sensitive skin at an affordable price. And I'm going to make it so much more than personal care external because that's what it is to me. It's been an overall personal care journey for me. And I want to give back to the mental
Right.
health community. And making the decision at that point in time to say, I'm going to launch this skincare line and 5% of every single purchase, I'm going to donate to bettering the mental health of individuals that suffer from trauma, suffer from PTSD, whether it's from child abuse, it's from other types of trauma in their life. I want to help them. I want to serve them with personal care externally and internally. And that's where I am now. And this decision to do this it's made such an impact on my life to leave the job that I had in corporate. And this was a part of that decision,
Yeah.
right? There's personal things that happened in my life that really helped to drive that. But focusing on like I want to be a
Yeah.
part of a bigger mission of helping to change the world around me, and this is the engine that's going to help me do that, or so I hope at this point.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what is the
Free
name of your
Skin Co.
skincare line?
And it's the mentality of
Free skin co.
free, right, physically free from, parabens and sulfates, and looking at clean ingredients, to freedom in personality and choosing to do things the way that you want. And the products that I have, while they're clean and organic and vegan, they're very bright. I have neon colors, and it invokes
Mm-hmm.
freedom of your personality and freedom of mental health issues and being the best you that you can be.
Mm-hmm.
So, all around, just the name of the company, Free Skin Co., it's about freeing yourself all around to be the best you that you can be and focus on your personal care.
Right. And it sounds like this skincare line is similar to why you started playing music as a
Mhm.
kid, right? You're trying to pour this emotion without forcing, without doing that like intentional sell, right? With the stuff. It's like
Yeah.
this is for you. And it's cool to see you pour the new energy into it. I'm wondering, so when you posted on LinkedIn and you got amazing feedback, I'm sure you got some not so amazing feedback. You got those naysayers probably as well. But do you think that almost gave you permission? I know that you've said that
Mhm.
you're not this type of person, but I'm I'm internalizing this right now, but it's almost like it would give me permission to take the leap, to really invest in myself and do my heart-centered work, whatever
Yeah.
that may be.
It
Do
it
you
no, I do
relate?
in a lot of ways. I do. And honestly, surprisingly enough, I had zero negativity when I shared my story in April.
That's
Zero.
great.
It reached 150,000 people worldwide. I had hundreds of comments, hundreds of messages. I connected with very successful individuals on Zoom and phone and message.
Mhm.
Nothing was negative in terms of, my outward
That's
message.
great.
And really, I was just looking to help one person, sharing my story to help one person. But
Mhm. You
it
did.
did, it did give me that permission to be myself. Like, this is me, right? This is me on this professional
Yeah.
platform, which I started posting on
Mhm.
LinkedIn to prove a point. Um, it I was creating this employee advocacy program, and I've coached personal brand and career brand for 10 years. I've worked with founders and CEOs and,
Mhm.
C-suite on their own brands as well as professional for 10 years. So I'm, preaching, preaching, preaching. This is how you do, and we're succeeding, but I've never done it myself. So as I was making this program for the company I was working at, it's very hard for individuals to put themselves out there, whether it's for sales or personal, or regardless of the reason. It's very hard for people to put themselves out there. So I started posting on LinkedIn to be like, okay, I'll prove a point. Here's how it works. I'm going to follow my own program. And one of my first posts was this post about my abuse. And it just, I don't know, it snowballed into this beautiful community that I get to be a part of now, that gives me permission to be me, that gives me permission to be bubbly and bright and fun and
Mhm.
encouraging and honest. And I get to share my yucky moments. I get to share my wins. I get to share my thoughts, no matter what they are.
Mhm.
And there's support because this is what people want. And I'm just doing what I would hope
Mhm.
someone else could do for me. And so absolutely, it's given me so much to invest in myself, which is why when things started happening in my personal life in late April and early May, I bet on myself. I left my job without a plan. I
Mhm.
left my job without a purpose, without another job. I wasn't looking for any other roles. I left because I am betting on myself. I believe in myself, and that's because of the community that I've created and surrounded myself with just by
Mhm.
being me. it has encouraged me so much
Yeah.
to do the things that I'm passionate about.
I love that. And part of me, like the whole time you're talking about this, I can just recall moments in which I've shared something online very publicly and I get messages behind the scenes that are like, you should take that down. You shouldn't share that opinion. That's going to, take you off the list of X, Y, and Z. And I'm comfortable enough now with that where I respond, if other people don't like that
Mhm.
part of me, then they don't like me. And therefore, do I want to be a part of that
Mhm.
curated system, right? I want to curate my own community. I want to be in a space that's comfortable, that makes sense, and
Mhm.
that I don't have to be performative, right? I don't want to play the role of
Yes.
whatever you want me to. So I completely relate to that feeling of how much confidence you can build in yourself when people are resonating, when you're your true authentic self, and to be able to go, no, my life and what I'm doing is more important than whatever's happening in these external
Yeah.
forces. So I'm going to take these steps and do it. I've quit a job before with no backup, and everyone, no lie, and I don't know if anyone did this to you, but pretty much everyone that asked me about it or talked to me about it was like, how many days can you go without a paycheck? And I'm just like,
Let's.
is that the most important? Is that like, clearly you can't go very long if that's why you're asking the question. But for me, it was like, no, I'm more important than the misery
Yeah.
that I was sitting in getting a
Yeah.
paycheck. Right. And so it's nice to see that you're able to curate this community that of belonging and where you are in this space to feel comfortable to leave that corporate expected job
Yeah.
that society has of everyone,
Yeah.
right, to do to invest in you.
It
So it probably
does.
feels really good
It's interesting. Every day, yeah,
and
it
scary.
is it's scary because it's unknown. I've had my own companies
Right.
before. I've had a successful brand agency in the past, but I didn't have kids. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have, right, the
Mm.
things that I have now and
Right.
the little people that I have now. So it's scary in the sense of you have to succeed. Like you have to make this work.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
No
is no
choice.
option because it's not just you anymore. But at the same time, it's invigorating and it's really pushing me to do what I'm passionate about and ignore those people that may
Hmm.
or may not say things, because the point of it all is you're not my audience. You're not the ones that I'm trying to have a relationship
Right.
with or sell or, bring into my community, whatever it may be. You are not my target audience. This is not my journey that you're looking to do. And it's just that
Right.
reminder that we have to give ourselves is, thanks for your opinion. You're not a part of my journey. You're not who I'm focused on.
Well, and I think it's hard too because growing up, we were always conditioned, or I feel like I was always conditioned that like you need the most amount of people paying attention to you. And it's like, I mean, I teach
Yeah.
at a college. That's not your target
Mhm.
audience, right? Like you can't target everyone. So, to be able to curate this community, what are you most excited about for the future
Oh my gosh.
in this
Um,
unknown?
I think that being able to show my kids that you can be yourself and be accepted 100% and be successful focusing on what drives you, what your purpose is, what your why is, and helping to change the world around you just by being you. I think that's what I'm most excited about, is to give my
Hmm.
kids this woman, this version of me that they're helping me become, right? Because they're my secret
Hmm.
encouragement. And being able to show them,
Hmm.
like, your mom did this to show you you don't have to do what everyone else says that you have to do. You do what you want, you be your true authentic self, you focus
Hmm.
on what you care about. That's how you succeed in life. And giving them the opportunity to be comfortable with who they are. I think that's genuinely what I'm most excited about through all of this. I
Well, I
hope
think
so.
you're on your way to doing that because just by sitting here listening to your story, I mean, your
Yeah.
story could have gone so differently, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it could have stopped at many points. It could have stayed in the anger. It could have, just continued doing what you're doing and a little bit of bubbling up here and there and angry. And so you've really curated this life for yourself by investing in yourself and letting yourself be the person that you were always meant to be, right? I mean, how many times can I say self in this statement? But early on you mentioned like you had one emotion, right? Like as a kid you were taught
Yeah.
one emotion or you knew one emotion, and it seems that you probably have
Oh, I
a
do.
wide spectrum of
I
them
do.
now.
And every emotion makes me cry now. um, but it's
Yeah, well,
nice. It's
that's
nice to
okay.
feel. It's nice to connect. It's nice to listen and to understand and
Yeah.
relate and experience. I love this version of myself. It's the one that I'm the most proud of.
Yeah, and yeah, I've talked to other people about this too, is that I think it's important for everyone to realize that whatever you're feeling at any
Yes.
particular moment is okay because
Hmm.
that represents you as a
Yeah.
human going through this experience, right? And I think so many times people are ashamed of a particular emotion over another one, or they prioritize one over another. And
Yeah.
nobody can be happy 100% of the time.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be sad 100%. Like we should be varying these emotions, and it seems that you have a handle now
Absolutely.
compared to your younger
Absolutely.
self.
And in anything,
Yeah.
especially when I'm, teaching others how to use LinkedIn or go after their own personal goals. I mean, being your true authentic self and remaining kind, those are two of the greatest gifts that you can give to anyone. You can be sad or angry or provoked negatively in terms of your passions that you're getting out, but if you're being kind,
Hmm.
that's when you curate community and you really invoke change in the world around you for the more positive.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm inspired by you. I think it's great to see what you're doing and how you're creating this
Thanks.
life for yourself. So thank you for sharing that. And what I like to do is end these conversations with a question that's not easy to answer or probably doesn't have an answer. But if you could go back to 9-year-old Ashley and tell her something about current Ashley or some advice, is there anything that you think you could say to her?
I would say start healing sooner. I missed out on a lot of life.
Yeah.
And while I would never want anyone to go through the things that I went through from my childhood to my adult life, I am grateful for the experiences because I am who I am because of them. But if I would have started healing sooner, I could enjoy a lot more of my life. I'm 7 years old
Yeah.
today in my eyes. And I'm a 34-year-old adult that relates to 7-year-old in terms of my emotions. And I could be a lot further ahead if I would just be
Right.
vulnerable to the healing journey sooner.
Yeah. And I think that's probably something that many children that had trauma early on is to find a way to heal. And it's, I mean, like you pointed out earlier in your story, it wasn't an option, right? It really wasn't because you weren't prepared. But having this hindsight, you're able to say something like that. I often say the same thing, and I'm so glad that you said it this time about being grateful for the
Mm,
experiences that you wouldn't wish on anyone else. Because,
yeah.
I mean, we're truly who we are because of those experiences. And oftentimes, people like you and the way you act now and who you are now often a result of something terrible,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I've found that as well.
Yeah.
I've found that as well.
But yeah, people are like, if you could go back in time and change things, I'm like, no, I wouldn't, not at this
No.
point, because I like where I am, who I am, what's around me, who I'm creating this life with. So no, I can't.
I relate. I relate all the way, my friend.
I appreciate you sharing this hard story, but I think we spent a good amount of time on how it made you an amazing human being. And I think that's what people will take away from this, but also in the sense that, and we said this before we started recording, is that like you're going to touch one person with this story that felt so alone that they were the only person that ever went
Mhm.
through this, and then feel inspired to be a 7-year-old too, right?
Yeah,
So I appreciate you
exactly.
sharing your deeply personal story on the Life Shift podcast. We'll share some of the information about your skincare line and contact information in the show notes so other people can connect with you if that's something that they're drawn to do.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me this space to share my story and to talk with you.
Of course. I appreciate you. Everyone else, we'll be back next week with a new episode of the Life Shift podcast. Again, I'm recording these way ahead of time, so my apologies to those that might have to wait a little bit. We'll see you next time.